Ni hao, здравствуйте, annyeonghaseyo, salam alaikum. I open with those four because today's show, there's a bill in Texas supported by their governor Greg Abbott proposing that citizens and entities from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran cannot, how did I hold that accent by the way, cannot purchase property in that their great state. So our question for ourselves should always be, what histories are underreported that allow the public to so easily get pumped up against outnumbered groups of people or imagined or real foreign adversaries or created? What hidden agendas lurk in that pumping up? Ask yourself. Well, what's we're going to talk about today? First of all, I want to say I really grown up with anti-China, anti-Russia, and anti-Iran my whole life, the whole lifespan, as far as back as I can remember. North Korea is a little more new kid on the block of designated enemies, but I remember seeing bumper stickers on cars of Mickey Mouse, I'm sure they didn't get copyright permission for this one, giving the middle finger saying, hey, Ayatollah. Now, before we get into that deeper political analysis, I just want to say, these kind of concepts, especially aimed at Iran and China, really drum up prejudice against people who people imagine are from that part of the world. And I want you to just imagine the logistical nightmare this kind of a law would be to enforce. The severe discomfort and obvious double standards or even arrogance that it's going to be like when you're that person who goes down to the county clerk office to file your deed and you're asked now to prove you're a citizen, pal. Prove it. And what's it going to be like? Well, your last name is Lee, spelled L-E-E. I suspect you're from China. You better prove you're there. Your darn citizenship, pal. No, it's not China. That's a Lee from the old South, my friend. Whoa, which one is it now? I think that's really, for lack of a better word, un-American. It's going to be the same for people who, quote, look Middle Eastern or sound Russian or their last names. Maybe it's a Slavic name and you'll be like, I think you're Russian. No, I'm from Chechnya. Or, what's it going to come down to? And I'll tell you, if anybody I knew was in that position or I was in that position, I'd be like, who the heck do you think you are? You think you're the real American? I don't think so. Maybe I'm the real American here. And the double standard, this is taking us back to the time of the Japanese internment during World War II. But note there was no German internment. While there was an active German-American Bund and plenty of people who supported old Adolf, people whose last name was Strudelmeyer weren't getting interned. Okay, so enough with this logistics and prejudice part of it. Let's move on now to that political analysis. Specifically, let's start with some hidden agendas. I've heard China, and I've told you this before, my friends, I've heard China use as an excuse not to curb greenhouse gases going back to the 90s. Haven't done a show on it yet, but I'm intending to. We saw during the COVID outbreak, or the initial stages of it's still going on, how there was all this focus on those wet markets in China and what they're doing, how they get the animals in there. Well, that took your eyes off the ball about factory farming right here at home, didn't it, amigo? There's something that could be done about getting rid of our factory farming, replacing it with nice small-scale organic. And this whole threat from China we always hear about. Well, just use your imagination. We don't have to read Noam Chomsky and all that to even figure it out. Just use your imagination. Imagine if you're in China, wouldn't it be pretty plausible to say the threat from the U.S.? And they just, over my lifetime, and look amigo, I supported some of these invasions, or at least one of them when I was younger, but over my lifetime, I'm thinking we've invaded Grenada, Panama, Afghanistan, Iraq, but then there's been a lot of coups that go really underreported. And again, this is not, against my own, not to the contrary, my friend. This is called looking at the mote in thine own eye, and it's also called real patriotism, not false patriotism. Well, talking about coups, that gets us to Iran, Persia. What's left out of our narrative, our historical narrative that I never learned about when I was a kid, and I'm hearing these nasty, crazy Iranians are taking Americans hostage after that Iranian revolution and put those terrible ayatollahs in power. And I'm not saying that was good, any of that stuff, or especially the taking hostages part, but what's left out of this is there was a coup in 1950, and this is probably declassified or whatever it's in the history now, actual history, but it's just not talked about, where us and Great Britain were instrumental in overthrowing a democratically elected socialist government. The guy's name was Mossadegh, and as far as his big crime was that he nationalized the oil industry, which I believe belonged to British Petroleum, put in the Shah, and apparently the Shah's regime was fairly brutal, but that sure wasn't how it was portrayed to me as a child. So then think about it now. If you're in that country and you can't get your true independence from these foreign corporations by going to the left because they're able to get in there and get elements of your own public revved up and do a coup, then you go to the right, so to speak, which was the theocratic, which is by inherent definition conservative revolution. But by not teaching any of that, not talking about any of that, not emphasizing any of that when we talk about Iran, it helps lead to that image we have of they're crazy over there. And we had nothing to do with it. We're just coming in as heroes saving the day every time. And that's bad for us. That's bad for us Americans because that's what gets us into wars. That's what got us into this massive military budget now. It's that defense industry that's really profiting from it. We're talking $20 million CEO salaries in some of those businesses. I showed you that before too. North Korea. Well, something I was shocked that I just heard in passing on public radio or something like that in the background was our history there that I never heard about. Let me just quickly read you this headline. Americans once carpet bombed North Korea. The U.S. Air Force subjected North Koreans to 3 years of rain and ruin. It was a living nightmare, one that still haunts the country to this day. Now, if you can remember the aftermath of 9/11, or you're distressed by the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, but remember how everybody around you was really pumped up and revved up. Think now, 3 years of carpet bombing. How would that leave our public? What kind of mood would we be in? What kind of government would we have? But instead, it's like they're crazy over there. See what I'm saying? Reminding me now of a punk rock song by Suicidal Tendencies, Institutionalized, a little brief aside. Lyrics, I'm not crazy, you're the one that's crazy, institutionalized. And if you ever checked it out or you lived through that era, you might enjoy that reference. So in our current conflict with Russia, what's left out there is this whole NATO expansion business and the fact that the defense industry lobbied for that, kept pushing NATO right to the Russian borders. But that's just always left out, that they don't want that. They never did want that. Not really a hard thing to emphasize, and it might make the public look at the situation a little differently. Maybe we would have already had a negotiated peace by now. Okay, second, anti-Russianism, and in the past it used to be anti-Chinaism. They still try to make it that way because China still has a communist party. But a lot of this is really tied into anti-communism, and I bought into that too when I was younger. But look what happened. The Soviet Union threw off its communist party, dismantled. They still have a communist party there, by the way, but they're just not in power. They're kind of like a minority party as far as I know. And in China, they still have a communist party too, but the whole thing's, there's a lot of wealth inequalities and private stuff. So when Russia dismantled that Soviet Union, well, basically their whole economy was privatized. So think about it. The whole economy was privatized. All those public sector owned goods sold off or given away at bargain sale to oligarchs and who knows who, foreign interests, I don't know. So now when I look at it, I think that's really the main agenda driving anti-communism, anti-socialism. Yeah, you could have some legitimate criticisms or beefs with it, but this overgeneralization, just getting us to be like, yeah, stop them, that's really hiding, I believe, or carried in with it is a privatization agenda. Well, if they crack open North Korea, who's going to get to buy what? And the hidden agenda in general, in terms of, just getting people to focus their anger on a foreign adversary, or now even worse, just outnumber groups of people. Oh yeah, and let me just tangent for a second back onto the Asian situation. So I just want to point out this myth that Asians are foreign or they're new. That's garbage. They've been here since the beginning. And if you think about the first settlers of America, they're walking across that Bering Sea, I believe, over that frozen ice between Alaska and Siberia. They're coming from Asia. Now, also, you had a lot of Asian migration during the 1800s, I believe, people coming from China to work on the railroads, from Japan to open farms and shops. Then there was this thing called the Asian Exclusion Act, which said, hey, no more Asians. You guys are doing too well here in our country. Our country. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Asian American is all American. And they're not new. They're just made falsely to look new because their numbers were unfairly, in my opinion, frozen at low numbers. All right, so back to that, like, distracted, what you're not looking at now with these, like, focus on outnumbered groups of people, foreign adversaries. Book Labor's Untold Story, a book published by the United Electrical Workers Union, pointed out that how in the past, at least, to break the unions, the owners might be bringing in different, ethnic groups or racial groups to kind of create this division among the workers. Now, hey, look, I'm not like anti-owner like some leftists are. Okay, I get it. The owner is really the responsible party. That's another way of looking at it. But there's a lot of truth in that analysis. What's being served by these ethnic racial divisions. And now let's just go back to Texas, the home of it all here. Governor Greg Abbott, Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who supports this bill, Well, I've shown you in an earlier video when he was dissing or bagging on or whatever slang people are using nowadays on wind energy and blaming, the power outages on wind energy when really the gas pipelines froze and everything in Texas. And that's climate change now. You got that cold air slumping down where it didn't used to. But he's blaming it on wind. I showed you a few articles showing how he's gotten campaign donations from the Koch brothers or Koch Industries, but no matter what, the Kochs are made their fortune in petrochemical fossil fuels. And according to DeSmog and other sources, these are big funders for climate change denial inaction. So Abbott's like, look at them folks from China, Iran, what they're doing, Russia. But hey, don't look at me, what I'm up to, not me, okay, what he's up to and who he's getting money from. Because I ain't getting money from much of anybody here, I'll tell you that much. But thank you to my 2 patrons, by the way. So last just thing, if I got any Republican viewers and you're still watching, hey, look, I considered myself a Republican at one point, and I got a lot of disappointment with the Democratic Party, I'll tell you. But I would say, dude, you're shooting yourself in the foot with this kind of a bill. What do I mean by that? I remember in the 90s, all the immigrants I was meeting, they were all like, I'm Republican. And I wasn't too happy with that. Why? Because concerned about the environment, and I think we got a completely out of control rat race, and it's more Democrats who are responsive to environmental groups and unions. But all these immigrants I was meeting from Asia, Latin America, I can't remember Africa at the time, but 90s, they all were like, yes, I'm a Republican, because the brand image, it's just like clean cut American, all American, work hard, blah, blah, blah. Well, you got that brand image and you are blowing it by taking these kind of stances. All right, that's a wrap for today. I hope you found this super interesting. I hope you made it till the end of the show. If you did, please make sure you're subscribed. Yeah, click that notification bell. You're commenting, you're liking. And until next time, thank you to my 2 patrons at Patreon, and peace be with you.